What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball and New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's popping with you tonight, bro?
What up, bro? Trying to stay warm out here, man. It is freezing. And I can say one thing. As a summer baby, I prefer a little bit of heat, a little bit of warmth, right? Because when you cold and it's just stinging you. But I will say, as a New Orleanian who went through a summer-long crawfish boil, I'm not gonna complain about the colder weather because, man, it was a scorcher. But nah, man, everything's all good on this end. Just enjoying Sunday. The Saints got taken behind the woodshed, and this season is finally over. So as the Pels kind of pivot into their new found energy and newfound aspect and look on their season, and stringing together some of these wins, including the one we're gonna talk about tonight. All eyes, right? You got a couple of ESPN games coming up, couple of nationally televised games with
Fox,
local television. All eyes are going to turn to the Pelicans now that the Saints season is over. So, it's gonna be good to see the city kind of pivot fully into the New Orleans Pelicans. So. It's gonna be interesting, man. All eyes on you, right? Zion, this is the biggie, but she's gonna go with Pac on this one, man. There's all eyes on the Pels, so it's gonna be very interesting, man. But how's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed, man. We trying to get healthy over here, man. You know how it is, man. You get one get sick, somebody else in the house get sick, and then by the other one get healthy, then somebody else gets sick. So we just trying to be cool.
Y'all got a Pelicans rotation going on. Right?
Basically, can't nobody stay healthy at the same time. But no, man, we're blessed over here. You're absolutely right. The Saints winning big fashion versus the Falcons today. All for naught, and it did absolutely nothing because now they just have a worse draft pick. But shout out to the players for getting Jamal Williams a touchdown versus the Falcons. If you're mad about it, just stop it. But before we get too far into the show, make sure you guys follow us on IG, follow us on Twitter, follow us on X, follow us on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Make sure you're liking the episode below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. So let's brag it up a little bit. There were some important games, like this whole little stretch of January. There's not a whole lot of gimme games, so you kind of got to talk through them all. So I want to start with the T-Wolves game. Pelicans win 117-106. None of the games that were played this week really showed. Even though the Pelicans won by 33 tonight, they bust the Kings' ass tonight. But these scores really reflect how the game went. So let's start with the Wolves game where the Pelicans dominated from start to finish. And the thing that, we talk about, I'm going to give you the mic to talk about Brandon Ingram and Zion, but I want to start with the coaching. I think this was the best and most well-managed game of Willie Green's tenure with this roster. Again, this is really the first time he's had all of these tools in his arsenal. Other than that, it's just been working with what he's had. And so you really have to judge him off this sample size versus the entirety of the last couple of years in totality, because it hasn't been the same team. But what I liked the most about this was everybody's going to talk about the rotations, which I thought were important, right? We talked about sometimes when guys don't have it going off the bench, try somebody else because you have a very equal talent in that player. But what I'd like to see was the Pels were figuring out counter, and I tweeted this out after the game. Games like this where people are trying different things at you, and you're figuring out, okay, if you're going to go to zone, I'm going to put Zion in the middle. Okay, if you're going to double BI off the catch or blitz BI off the catch, now I'm going to swing it around until it finds Trey, until it finds CJ. When you're finding answers to problems, that is a game that you kind of put it in your belt and you hang it back for late in the season. Because those are the things, some of the blowouts for some of the teams that aren't going anywhere. You don't take a whole lot from that. But games where you're playing in high stakes where it's another competitive team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the number one team in the West, that they're bringing their best because they hadn't lost back-to-back all season long. You know that they're bringing their best because they had lost one game at home all this season. They brought it, and the Pelicans were just the better team from start to finish. And so the defense was relentless. The ball movement is great. So it was just a all-around coach game, I think, for Willie Green and his staff. But what did you see from the players that you really liked from that game?
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think that was one of the best coach game. Willie kind of let things come to him, and as problems presented themselves, he just kind of moved on, right? Chess move, right? You zone. All right, gosh, we go to JV for a couple of plays, but I'm going to give all the credit to that game to Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson because, and I tweeted this out. They have had games where they have scored 30 in the same game, and they've had high scoring 40 and 30s, but this was the most complete game that I think that duo has ever played in anybody's tenure. Zion, Stan Van Gundy, Alvin, all the no matter who. It was game. They started from the get-go. They got behind their defense. It was Brandon Ingram rotating, hands everywhere, taking the challenge, even when Ant came down, on him, taking that challenge, doing a couple of help defenses, beating the play to the spot. And when you start to tap in, when Brandon Ingram taps in to that kind of defensive, instincts, he's so long and so athletic and so smart basketball wise that when he taps into that, you saw how much of a defensive impact. And then Zion, right? Zion played with force on both sides of the floor. You felt Zion Williamson's impact and his presence on offense, but on defense, right? There was a couple plays where Ant went to look for Zion on a pick, on a switch, and Zion moved his feet, got there, contested without fouling, rebounding. He met Ant at the summit, right, for a dunk. And I think it was symbolic because the Pelicans have been trying to overcome ghosts and overcome demons throughout this entire season, right? Whether it's been, repaying the Lakers for the loss or waiting to play Memphis again to get back for that. I think for Zion personally, I think about that clip where Anthony Edwards came into the Smoothie King Center, torched the Pelicans, torched Zion. And you saw Zion going in the back and, from one hooper to another, giving them that respect, giving Ant that respect, and much deserved, right? You love to see that kind of sportsmanship. But at some point, you wanted to see Zion, like, to hell with that. Like, I am that guy. And I think seeing him go up and meet Ant at the summit, it also reminded me of that play-in tournament game where Ant met CJ at the summit and effectively ended the Pelican season. That it was a little bit of payback. And I've always said with the Pelicans, they can win games, right? Sometimes you need to win a game a certain way. And when you're stepping on the floor with Anthony Edwards, who has been the star, the darling of the NBA season, right, along with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the guy who's everybody is crowning like this is the next guy, this is Michael Jordan, and he's proven it, right? He's coming all through the FIBA run, right? It was if Brandon Ingram is giving in to Anthony Edwards because he's the superstar. Sometimes you needed your stars to go in there and say, to hell with all of this, to hell with that. We are the best players on this floor, and you got that from both sides of the floor with Zion and Brandon Ingram. And so this particular win was super satisfying, and it was one of the best wins of the season, especially when you think the fact that, because you blew out Brooklyn, you got rest, but it was the second night of a back-to-back. It was against the number one team in the West. It was against a team that hadn't lost back-to-back games this season. It was against a team that only lost once at home. Like, that was a difficult game to play, and the Pelicans went up there and made it look easy.
Right. So you go off the emotional high of that one, and then you come back home and play the Clippers. Now, again, Pelicans lose 111-95. The game wasn't that close.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like Jordan Hawkins came in, and we'll get to that. But Jordan Hawkins came in and made the game look a lot closer than it was on the stat sheet. But the thing that I take away from this game, more than any of the games of this week, is I think this is the game that the Pelicans learn the most about. Like a lot of times people talk about, it's easier to learn from losses than wins, because in wins you're like, okay, I made some mistakes, but we won. Where losses, like you got to look at every single detail of why we won. And for this game, like I'm not that upset about, the lack of shooting. We'll talk about, and I want to get your take on the lack of floor spacing, or we just talked about and gave praise to the coaching staff and the rotations in the Wolves game. Well, then the Clippers game, there was less adjustments. There was less, let me work to my advantage. There was more of, okay, this is what you're giving me. This is what I'm going to try. But the thing that I walk away from that Clippers loss is, okay, the Clippers said the last 100 times we played the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram has lit us on fire, whether it be a play-in tournament a couple of years ago, whether it be earlier this season, whatever it may be, Brandon Ingram has lit us on fire. We are not going to let Brandon Ingram stop us. Very similar to how the Kings approached Zion earlier in the season, where no matter what, they were not going to lose because of Zion. Well, in this game, again, it's not so much the offense, because the Clippers have been playing extremely well as of late. They're the hottest team in the West. Both teams came in with the longest win streaks in the West, and the Clippers outplayed this young Pelicans team. But the thing that I noticed the most is that the Clippers, because of the future Hall of Famers they have on their roster, they make it so that you have to think twice about doubling. Because, if you double Paul George, then are you leaving Kawhi open? If you double Kawhi open, are you leaving James Harden open? So you always got to think. But at the same time, look at what the Clippers did to the Pelicans. No matter what, they were okay living with someone else beating them other than Brandon Ingram, other than Zion. Zion got it going. He got hurt, didn't play the second half, but the game was much in hand before that. And so, you look at what they said, and they're taking something away. They're living with the fact that if Trey goes off or CJ goes off, we just lost that night. And that's what you're going to have to do in the playoffs. You're not going to be able to stop everything. Dyson and Herb, as great as they've been defensively, they're not going to be able to stop these Hall of Fame players one-on-one. And so the fact that, they just weren't playing connected on the defensive end, that's the thing that's most alarming. On the offensive end, the ball movement stopped. You can argue is because other guys were missing shots and Brandon Ingram started to force it a little bit because he lost trust in the other guy. But really, I was more focused on the defensive end, because if you play that way, which can work versus other teams, like you saw it work tonight versus the Kings, play that way where you guard your yard, you guard the person in front of you, that's all fine and dandy. But what you see Kawhi and Paul George kind of cook up and hit 2 or 3 in a row, at some point, you need to force the ball out of the hot person. So what was your thoughts on that Clippers loss and your takeaways, if any?
Yeah, I think, that Clippers loss showed, the other side of some of the rotation things that we talked about, right? And again, when you talk about, this team and who's on this team and, what are the roster construction, when we talk about people on the bench being interchangeable because nobody other than really Trey has that cachet to where they need minutes on the floor, that this is the game where we talk about that, right? When you look across that on that Clippers roster, and we talked off the pod about how similar the Clippers are to the Pelicans. They're in the different stages of their career, but it's very similar. Stars missing, got role players, got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Don't really have any shot blocking, but got a big kind of foreign big man. It's a lot of similarities between the two teams. But the one place that the Clippers have a significant advantage over the Pelicans is that their energy guy is Russell Westbrook, right? He's 6'6". He's athletic. He can still blow past you, one of the fastest guys in the league, and he's a veteran. And then you look at who, the Pelicans energy guy is, and God bless him, Jose Alvarado. It was not a Jose Alvarado game against the Clippers. He was overwhelmed by the sheer just tall people on the floor for the Clippers. And you saw it, right? And you saw the Clippers do what we've been asking the Pelicans to, what we always ask the Pelicans to do, hunch and mismatch. Russell, soon as Jose got in the game, Russ went at Jose and at Jose and at Jose. And then when they switched off of him and he went on to Norm Powell went at Jose. And then they put Jose in actions, right? And dribble handoffs and pick and rolls to where he has to guard a roller going down the floor. but like it might be Norm Powell, who is 6'5", 6'6", or Russell Westbrook, and so that is where I propose that Willie Green looks at his team and say, okay, listen, Jose, you are a valued member to this team. You are a valued contributor to this team. You will play in games and win games for the Pelicans throughout this entire season. But this particular game, this is not your game. We're going to let the rookie play, Jordan Hawkins, or we'll let whoever, some other person play and get those minutes. Now, my vote would be for Jordan Hawkins, who came in and tied the leader, the leading scorer for the game, with his couple of minutes that he came in. And so, like I think you have to be flexible with the rotations. You have to be able to say, okay, listen, this guy isn't working. And I keep saying that I don't think that this team, the guys on the bench, the second line, I don't think that they would be upset about, okay, this is not my game. Like, go let Jordan Hawkins score. Like, all right, let Dyson run, let Najee run. Like, I don't think any of those guys matter. Who scores to them? I don't think that they care. And so you saw, just a breakdown defensively. And it's not all on Jose. I'm just pointing that out because that was one of the things that was glaring, right? It was screaming off the court. So I can imagine it was screaming off the screen after you got through your little, I heard about the Smoothie King interview and how long it took. So in between that, you were seeing it. But yeah, I just think that you saw, Russell Westbrook out Jose in this game. And once the Clippers are extreme front running team, meaning like when they get rolling, when Paul George is getting shots down and Harden is getting shots down and Russ got the bench rocking, they are a difficult team to catch up with because they have so much offensive firepower. So once the Pelicans kind of, let them attack that weakness over and over again and get some of those stops, Jose got blocked by Kawhi, trying to shoot one of his patented floaters over him, just completely smacked it out of there for a shot clock violation. Once you start getting that and taking advantage of over and over again, and those shots start to fall, and they play in transition. The Clippers played the same exact game that the Pelicans played in Minnesota. They got in transition, they got stops, and once that ball started rolling and Norm Powell started hitting threes, it was a wrap. BI started trying to save the game. Zion didn't come back. It just was one of those games where it's like, you know what? This got away from us early. It's ugly. Wipe it away, and come out and play the next game. And it was very similar to the Lakers game in Vegas, where it's like it's ugly, but like you have another game to play. And we saw the response tonight.
Yeah, my biggest issue with it, and we can move on, but my biggest issue with it is like once you are down a certain amount, I could get with the understanding of we're not going to win by trading buckets. We have to get stops. And so we got to put our defensive guys out there in order to get stops. But like my issue is like you shouldn't get to that point. Like once you get a run and you're down 7, you're down 8 at home, you should call time out and say, let's try something different. Because right now, what we're throwing at them that's not working, let's make them adjust. And like that just never came. And I think again, that's a growing spot for this young coaching staff and this young team as well. So as long as, Jose and Najee are making shots, let them out there. They've got the experience. They've got the defensive chops. But if they're not giving it to you on the defensive end, like you probably should lean on the Dyson and the whole because every time Dyson goes in, even if he's not scoring, he puts an impact on the game. And every time Jordan Hawkins goes in, even if he's not scoring, he makes you guard him out there so Brandon Ingram doesn't see as many bodies. And so I just think that there's more growth to be had in terms of rotation from that standpoint, which leaves us to this game where, again, the Pelicans have only lost one back-to-back game in the last 2 months so far. And so that's a really good spot to be in for a team that's learning how to win consistently, right? And so, again, poor Kings. I had somebody in my mentions months ago talking about when they get back to Sacramento, it'll be a different story. They went to Sacramento twice, and the Kings got mollywatched. The Pels are just a horrible matchup for the Kings because there's too much length, there's too much physicality, and for a team like the Kings who are predicated on finesse and speed and agility, if someone's just as fast and just as agile and bigger and stronger than you, that's a bad matchup for you. So again, the Pels blow them out. They were up by 50 at one point. Like this guy, EJ Liddell got in and he don't play. Cody Zeller hit a three. Like,
yes, he did.
It was one of those games where it's like, man, they trying to hit fast forward and sim to end on this one. So were there any takeaways you took away from this Kings matchup?
CJ is on a freaking heater.
Yeah.
That dude he is getting back to that CJ McCollum that we saw earlier in the season. And it's not just this game. Like, he's been playing well for, a couple of games now. Like, you kind of saw this game coming with the way CJ has been playing lately. But man, he is on a heater. And if he is going to continue to play like this, he's shooting with supreme confidence. And there's no hitch. And I think there should be a lot of praise given to CJ for embracing more of a catch and shoot, right? We've seen a lot of catch and shoot from CJ. Now, obviously, he gets into his bag a little bit sometimes, and because he gets it rolling, and it's been pretty good for him to do that this season. And so, there's a lot of praise to him for getting comfortable playing off the ball. But I think this is the Kings are a case study of, well, the Kings versus the Pelicans, at least, is a case study for what we always talk about when, like, your best players, if your best players are a slightly built point guard, in a heavily leaning offensive big man, and you don't have that wing, that predatory wing, I think we've seen, we've seen this story, right? We've seen how it goes. And we talk about roster construction, and this is another feather in the cap to the Pelicans and their roster construction, because if you can get on the floor and Brandon Ingram and Zion, are your, and CJ and JV are your offensive engines, and Trey Murphy, and none of those guys have to guard De'Aaron Fox, because you have two all-world defenders you can throw at them, and then a really good one in Najee, and if Jose was out there, you could throw hot Jose out there. That's just roster construction, right? When you have guys who specialists, De'Aaron Fox was miserable all game long, whether it was Dyson, whether it was Herb, it did not matter. He was miserable all game long. And that goes to show that this Pelicans team, whatever you ask for, it's not hyperbole to say, whatever you ask for is on this team outside of shot blocking. Like, anything else you want, like, it's there. You need some defense, you got those guys. You need some superstar power, got those guys. You need some all-star caliber power, got some of them too. Need some shooting, got some of them too. So, like, you have everything, and this is the kind of game that kind of roster construction build. When you hold a team to sub 80 points, 90, whatever it ended up being, and you're all the way at 130, like, that is a sign of a well-constructed team. And it's the Kings, right? This isn't like a throwaway team. Like, when you go on the road and do something like that, it is the sign of a good team, of a well-constructed roster. And this is just another feather in the cap to the roster, to the Pelicans' flexibility and depth on their roster.
Right, like the last time the Pels had a home-and-home series with the Kings, De'Aaron Fox came in averaging 30 and all that, and it went very similarly. Like, it's just a tough matchup for them in that outright. You bring up CJ, like, CJ's been cooking over his last 10, averaging 19, 5, and 5, shooting 48% from three. And it's not just the catch and shoot. I agree with you. Like, him embracing that role, and if it's less, I'm a floor general and more so of a floor spacer, but it's also like the timely buckets. And like, he's like, to start the season, you were saying that the Pelicans are coming out slow. They're coming out sluggish. Nobody's being aggressive. Well, he's starting. He talked about it after the game tonight. He's starting to be aggressive to start games, to get Brandon Ingram going, to get Zion going. Because if he gets a couple going, all of a sudden the energy starts bringing a little bit. But it's also the ones where it's like, this team is coming back. They're making a run, and then CJ just comes up and gets a quick 2 or gets a catch and shoot 3. And so he's been really good in both of those aspects over this latest stretch.
That one where I think JV tried to hit BI on a cut, and like BI kind of missed. He missed it. He didn't even see it. CJ picked it up, one dribble, fadeaway shot. Like, the Kings were not getting back into the game, but you could kind of see like they were trying to make a run. And that looked like that was about to be another turnover where they could come down and maybe cut it to 20. You never know what happens at that point. But CJ fixes that, erases that whole issue with a step back mid-range shot, and just has answered the call every single time the Pelicans have needed.
Right. So you look at that, and there's several examples of that over the last couple of games, even though the Pelicans have been blowing the hell out of everybody outside the Clippers. But somebody who didn't play, Zion Williamson tonight, hip contusion, didn't check back in, said he checked himself out. Willie Green looked like a little upset about that in the post game. I don't know if he was just upset because the team got blown out, but it was like, oh, we don't really know what happened. Zion just said he couldn't go. Is that weird to you? Because you and I were talking about, we're like, don't say it. But Zion's already played more games this season than he did all of last season. But is it weird to you that like he checked himself out off a bruise and then didn't play the night? Or do you kind of say they got 2 days between now and Golden State, give him an extra day to get healthy, and let's see because we don't want to risk it because right around this time last year, there goes the season. So what are your thoughts on the kind of weird Zion injury from yesterday?
Yeah, my best friend Keaton texted me that. He was like, man, I don't really want to say it, but I feel like we all jaded because right around this time, Pelicans were rolling, and what happened? Nobody said nothing. We don't want to talk about that. But I think, he did. Okay, so he did leave the game, and it was reported that he had a leg contusion. That's what was told to me. I was at the game. I didn't hear the broadcast, but apparently Joel said that he had a leg contusion, and that's why he didn't come back in the second half. And so my thing is, it's weird, but I'm not really too concerned or worried about it right now because, Zion has played, like you said, played more games than he played last season. And hasn't really missed a lot of games because of injury, right? It's been little things here, and then obviously he had that little stint at the earlier.
No back-to-backs.
Right, no back-to-backs and things like that. Had the baby, the kid, and things. And so we have seen him be dedicated to playing. He has been on the floor. And so if this is what it takes, right? If every so often he needs to like sit out a game where you have 2 days of rest between that game and the next game, if this is what it takes to maintain his playing status and maintain him on the floor, then it doesn't bother me, right? I would like to see Zion play enough games to be considered for all NBA or whatever, right? Just to be considered for it. I would like to see it. And so I want to see him on the floor. But I let me see what happens with the Warriors game, right? Like this is on ABC. We talk about a televised game, so the league's player, no kidding, no kidding. But the league's player participation policy comes into play here, and so if he's able to play, then he should play, and play on ABC. And so, let's see there, right? If it comes back and it's like, hey, because we always talk about the pitchers, right? If he is in the pitchers, then he has a chance to play. Well, the Pelicans posted him in the pitchers before this game, working out, right? He wasn't playing basketball, he was working out, which might have been symbolic. But he was working out. So it doesn't seem like it's something that is like keeping him sidelined, like away from practice and things like that. So that's good, that's good news. So let's see what happens Wednesday against the Warriors, see if he plays then. If he doesn't play then, let's revisit this, and then we might have to be like, okay, well, what's really going on? But if he had some kind of nick, just the Pelicans were like, hey, this game is a wash, and then maybe they just feel comfortable playing against Sacramento, where like don't really matter who out there, like we just do what we do. And so they say this little quick trip, we'll get it to San Fran, and we'll see, if he plays there. So ask me after that, and we'll see if it's weird. But for now, if this is what it takes to keep Zion on the floor and keep him playing the way he's been playing this season, especially as of late as he gets back into form, and like we see him at practice and you see him working, so it's not something keeping him away, then I'm all right with it. It's not a red flag for me just yet.
Here's my only drawback from it all. I feel like, again, we're almost at the halfway part of the season, just a couple games away. I feel as if the Pelicans need like a solid 20 games of Brandon Ingram and Zion both being healthy, and not just being healthy, but both playing like they're 100% and both playing, because that's the true vision of this team. When those two guys are Hammond and Hahn and are unstoppable, that's the Pelicans at its peak. And you just haven't been able to see it because the roster's been out. Even this season, like you haven't had Trey, you haven't had your role players. You get your role players back, then CJ goes down, and like you haven't been able to see it. I just think they have to do that consistently because, like, you look at that Timberwolves game, and we talk about it and say, man, that's one of the best games of the BI Zion era. And it's not just because they had it going offensively. It's because they were both locked in defensively, and I felt like they were leading on each other. You could see it early in the game, BI go over to Zion. It was like 2-0 and kind of talk to him about something. And, like, you want to see more of that between your top two guys, of two guys really getting it going. Like, okay, I see you made that play on defense. Bet. Zion comes back with the block of a BI. Like, you want to see more in that growing on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side, you got to give Willie Green some opportunities to figure out the rotations with those two. Like, you and I have been screaming about it. There should be no minutes when both of them are available for the entire game where one of them is not on the court, if not both of them. And because what you need to see from that is you want to see both of them get opportunities to shine in a half court that makes sense. And for Zion, it's him with shooters. For BI, it's him with shooters too. And so you want to see them get different spots where they're able to do that. And I just haven't seen that so far consistently. Now, you're starting to see it now. And again, you say all this, and you're winning by 20 and things like that. But you're talking about for a team that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, you kind of have to get some of that during the season if you want to be effective in round one. And God forbid, round two and things like that. The other part of it is I do think it has to do with conditioning. So Tim Legler, NBA analyst, he had some things to say about Zion and some things about not knowing who the Pelicans' best player was, things like that, because Zion isn't consistent. Every night, you don't see him necessarily running up and down the court every single play and things like that. I would make the same argument that sometimes you see that from Brandon Ingram too. Like, there are times where, again, he's not the first one down the court. And you see when he wants to lock in and bring it defensively. But sometimes he's just kind of loathing too and letting rebounds go. Like, remember at the end of last year, he missed the rebound that would have got the putback to allow them to beat OKC, right? Like, and so, like, certain things like that, you just want your star players to get in a rhythm of doing game in, game out, over and over and over. So, like, that's the only thing that kind of draws pause every time one of them missed games off a Nicky neck injury. Again, the game was out of hand. The Pelicans were probably not coming back, even as Zion in the game. You just want to see them stack performances together. The results may not be the same, but you want to see that effort, that level of effort that you saw from BI and Zion in that game in more games consistently. So before we get into that breakdown of Golden State on Wednesday, which, again, you talk about conquering demons, I think for Willie Green, I think it's a demon. I think for the Pelicans, I think it's because every time they go play the Warriors, some shit happens, and Draymond is fighting Herb, and somehow the Pelicans are up big, and somehow the Pelicans end up losing. So I want to get into that. But something that, like, I want to low-key touch on real quick. Have you been watching Dyson Daniels' defense? Like, the Pels are not playing slouches. Like, they're playing some of the best talent in the league, and yeah, they lose to the Clippers. But outside of that game, like, you've seen Dyson, like, go chest to chest with some of the best talent in the NBA and, like, really make it difficult for them. Like I've never seen Ant look like Dyson was putting his chest in, and Ant was like, and Ant's a strong dude, and Ant was like, I don't know where to go. And De'Aaron Fox was like, man, I go from Herb to Dyson. Damn. And so, like, I'm looking at that, and it all comes with the biggest downside for Dyson is obviously his offensive game that has come and goes. But if he's going to be locking up guys like that, if your main sub is Najee Marshall for what he's been able to do, and he's been shooting a career high from the three-point line, if he's not hitting shots, do you see Dyson aiming to kind of eat some of these minutes away? Because, like, he's making it to the point where, like, it's hard to keep him off the floor, right?
Yeah, I think Willie is seeing it, right? I tweeted it earlier today. He got his swagger back. Like, he has his swagger back. And Dyson is a guy that he floats, his game floats with his defense. And what I mean by that is if he's not playing to the level of Dyson Daniels on the defensive side of the ball, his offense goes with it. Like his confidence lies in his defense. And once they put Dyson back in a position where he was coming in and being asked to be more Herb Jones than point guard, right? I still think he has a development and in a point guard. Like he's good at it. But when he's more of a look, we're using you exactly like Herb as like the tertiary playmaker, but like the primary defender. And he can get, he came into this season at Media Day. He talked about wanting to be an impactful defender, not just a good defender, right? Make impact plays similar to Herb, steals, blocks, things like that. Dyson led the league in deflections. He's probably still up there, but he would lead the league in deflections for a while. And he's a guy that he's starting to get turnovers. And if it's not his turnovers, he's stonewalling defenders to turn into the help defense or turn into a position where they're not comfortable, which then leads to a turnover. And he gets in transition and he can get easy layups and things like that where they're giving him the ball. Now we saw him tonight putting the ball on the floor, getting his layup package back, hit that corner three. He's been hitting, decent amount of corner threes for the Pelicans. And I think whoever has gotten into his ear about, listen, your offense is, scoring at the rim and corner 3-point threes. Don't worry about anything else and play hellacious defense. They simplified his role, simplified the game for him, and he's been paying dividends. And we're starting to see there are a couple of times where we've been texting, and I'm like, is he not coming back? Because Dyson is playing a lot of minutes. Dyson was closing quarters against the Timberwolves and against the Clippers. Like he's starting to see this, and I think it's to your point. Like it's a great point. Najee is one of those guys that's having a career year, from the 3-point line and is playing great basketball. And I think for his contract, there's not a lot of guys giving you that production. Najee is one of the best bargain contracts in the NBA. I think that there are a couple of teams like if like the Cavs could get their hands on Najee as like a starting small forward where like you need a patchwork small forward, like Najee could start for like Cleveland, like in a couple of teams, and especially in a pinch. But if he's not giving you that, you have the option and the luxury of going to a guy who is like not even poor man's Herb Jones, just kind of like middle class man's Herb Jones. And that's just because of experience and age. And I think as Dyson Daniels grows, he's going to be one of those deep, best defenders, wing defender discussions that we talk about. And when you talk about like Boston having Drew and Derek White, like as a defensive backcourt, we saw it when Herb had to step. When Dyson had to step in and start. When those guys are on the floor together, he and Herb. Good luck. It's Alcatraz. It is Angola. Like it's just locked up. But Dyson has played phenomenal, and he is. His defense has really opened the eyes of basketball nerds, because you look at his stats and things, you're like, oh, he got a steal in this, but like he is locking people down, like you said. Ant had 35, and it was kind of like he had what? Really? Like, let's go check the stats on that. You sure he had 35? Because it wasn't impactful, because he like everywhere he turned with Dyson, he was there. So man, big shout out to Dyson, and I think his defense is definitely going to get him. We all know the key to Willie Green's heart is defense, and if that lands true, Dyson is a sure fit to come in and play more and more minutes. If Najee is not contributing the way he needs to.
Yeah, I look at Dyson, and to be honest with you, I think there are some matchups that Dyson is a better matchup than Herb, because Herb is a slender dude, whereas Dyson talks about how many weights that he lifted this summer, and you can see like the size difference when people try to put their shoulder down and Dyson doesn't move. The thing with Dyson is, again, we talk about his confidence. You got to remember, he's the youngest player on the team. Like, yeah, Jordan Hawkins is a rookie, but Dyson is the youngest player on the team. And so with young players, you're going to have ebbs and flows. But the thing with Dyson, and what he has to realize, is that similar to another connector that played for this team once upon a time in Lonzo Ball, when he doesn't turn the corner because the defense is sagging off for Brandon Ingram or sitting in the corner with CJ or that hurts the team. So whether or not he's making it or not, just being aggressive at going to the basket and dunking it and not just laying the ball up, or his spin Aussie floaters or whatever he got going, just being aggressive in itself, that should earn him more minutes because, again, as you've seen over these last couple of games and some of the games we started early in the season, when he's confident in it, it goes in. Even the jump shot, it goes in. And so when he loses that confidence and just stops shooting, stops attacking altogether, it makes it hard for him to stay on the court because people just leave him open. And so when that flip turns or that switch turns, I think there's a lot of minutes for Dyson Daniels on this team. So with that being said, the Pels get a couple days rest before they go from Sacramento to San Fran in the Bay. The Golden State Warriors, who, again, very similar to the Pels, similar. It's crazy that, Steve Kerr is like the mentor for Willie Green because now they're yelling at Steve Kerr for not playing Kuminga and Moses Moody. And that, it's crazy that he's not playing young players and things like that. But they're going through some turmoil. Draymond Green is doing WWE matches. He's supposed to come back. I was just waiting for them to say that Draymond Green was going to return for the Pelicans game because, of course, but apparently he needs a week to ramp up. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a surprise starter.
Is he coming through if you smell coming out?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened that way. But you got a Warriors game. The Warriors are reeling. They're under 500. I don't see a whole lot of escape routes unless Clay turns back the clock 5 years. I look at the roster, I look at their assets, and I just don't see a lot of escape routes there.
And Chris Paul, you can't even trade Chris Paul now because he got surgery. So it's like,
and so I look at that, and honestly, and this is wild that I am saying this, Garrick. In the year 2024, I'm coming off the cliff. This is like you should win game. Like this is a take care of the teams under 500. I know it sounds crazy. It's the Warriors and it's Steph Curry, great shooter of all time. But you go into this game, and then you got Denver on Saturday, and then you got Denver on Friday. You got Dallas on Saturday. You got Dallas on Monday. Like this is one of the games you should have. And so, what are your thoughts? What are your keys going in this Wednesday matchup versus a team that the Pelicans have a lot of history with?
Physicality. I think the Pelicans, if they go in there and play how they've been playing in Minnesota, and in Sacramento, where it is a full-on assault at the rim and the paint, and you start there, right? Like you start there with paint touches. I tweeted out the pillars of the Pelicans' success are paint touches, defense, and ball movement. If those are the barometers for the Pelicans, if you see them come out locked in defensively, swarming, not letting Steph get open, not letting Steph run behind 3 and 4 screens, and understanding that Steph, it takes a village to guard Steph Curry. So, if they come out there like that, then, you know that the defense is going to be there. Then the next thing you need to see is, okay, are they moving the ball, right? Are they not trying to play, trying to get into mano-a-mano with Steph or mano-a-mano with Andrew Wiggins or things like that? Is it continuous ball movement? Are they thinking ahead, trying to passing up good shots for great shots? Like, are you doing that? And then also, are you paying attention to the details? We talked about the details, right? You have to make sure that you're staying attached to Steph Curry. It cannot just be Herb Jones by himself. You know that they're going to screen to get him open. You have to make sure you're committed to the defense, you're connected, and you're communicating, right? Your 3 C's. You have to have those on defense, or the Warriors will make you pay, right? And this is a game that the Pelicans should win. It should win handily, right? Like if this team, especially if Zion plays and Draymond doesn't, then like they have a significant physicality, advantage over the Warriors. If Brandon Potazinski and Trace Jackson Davis, and if this is going to be Kevon Looney, if these are going to be your enforcers, I like JV, I like Zion, I like Brandon Ingram, I like Trey Murphy against those matchups. So play inside, continue that all-out assault on the rim, continue to commit on defense, connected, communicating, and make sure that you're getting in transition, right? Play in transition, run this team. There's a lot of veterans on this team. They're just starting to get their young guys in. Jonathan Kuminga is getting in, but the bulk of that team comes from Steph and Clay and Andrew Wiggins and Kevon Looney. A lot of veterans. Run this team up and down the floor, get in transition, Use your athleticism, use your young legs, play with force. And I think the Pelicans get this game, running away, really, honestly. But again, Steph Curry and Steph Curryisms. I still have sleepless nights of that corner shot in the playoffs. Oh man, that was So the Pelicans definitely owed him one. They got kind of punked last season. In that second half, they got punked. Everybody was calling for Steph Curry to play. You never play in New Orleans. You never play in New Orleans. Oh yeah, be careful for what you ask for. So now the Pelicans, another chance to exercise a demon, make a wrong right. And we'll see if they come out with it.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more. So, with that being said, that's all we got with you today. Pels beat the Kings again. 4-0. They win the season matchup. There's one more game that's crazy that they play the Kings 5 times this season. I'm sure the Kings hope that game isn't for their playoff lives or something like that. But what you got left for the people?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile today. Yeah, I start the petition, man. Start the petition that we get the Kings at least 10 times more, man. Like if the Pelicans could just play the Kings every game, they would win the championship. But
you mean like the Bucks versus
yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, every other day. Start the rivalry, right? Start the rivalry. De'Aaron Fox, just go ahead and put them on the schedule over and over again. But yeah, man, the Pelicans are in the midst. This road trip with some high level talent, some high level teams with some high aspirations. The Pelicans are off to a good start to this January stretch where we said this is where your season is defined. This is about as good of a start, maybe except for that Clippers game as you could ask for with blowout wins in Minnesota and Sacramento. So, we'll see going forward, but this is where the tough get going right here. So, as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball No E. That's on Twitter, X, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time.